Welcome to Assault, Learn and Play, Part 6, 9, Chapter 9, 13, Movement Actions, Part 14, Movement with Covering Fire. Movement with Covering Fire is a special movement activation, activates two adjacent units at the same time. One unit moves with a fast or normal action. This is the movement unit, MU, while the second unit fires covering fire. This is the firing unit, FU. If playing with command points, two command points are needed for the activation of both units. The movement unit also receives the strongest attack die of the firing unit in addition to its defense dice due to the covering fire. Check the attack dice of the fire unit cards. The covering fire has no effect on the unit that performs reaction fire. So this is a mode giving the movement unit additional defense bonus because of a firing unit is supporting the approach over terrain into the direction of the enemy or something else. I will show it in the simulator later on. Important: the covering fire can only be used once for an enemy reaction fire action. The player of the movement unit decides when the covering fire effect starts. To use this effect of covering fire, the firing unit must have a line of sight, free or hindered, to the reacting unit. If the firing unit cannot attack the reacting unit according to its values on the unit card, covering fire is not possible. So, for example, if you have an only versus infantry unit value unit, then you cannot give such a firing unit attack to a tank, for example. If the covering unit is marked with a -1 attack die or already reduced to half strength, the next weakest die color is used instead of the strongest die. If the weakest die is already blue, it is used. So, for example, if your unit is marked with -1 attack die or half strength, and you have the strongest die on this distance for the firing unit to the target unit of a red, then you have to take the yellow die. And if it is the yellow, then you have to take the green. If it's green, you have to take the blue. If it's blue, take the blue. I will show up some examples in the simulator now. So an important precondition for movement with covering fire is that the firing unit which is giving the covering fire on the unit which takes over reaction fire from your opponent is adjacent to the starting movement unit. So in this case, you can have, of course, all type of units for covering fire, like the tank here on the 3J, the heavy machine gun, or the artillery unit like the 75mm. They are all adjacent to the rifles, and you can choose which one you want to take, define as a firing unit, and this depends, of course, on the threatment you calculate of the enemy side. So if you say, okay, I have a possibility that the tank takes over reaction fire when I move forward, I would choose the tank because the tank is able to fight on the Sherman, or of course the 75. They both can give then covering fire. So important is that the firing unit you are planning to activate are adjacent to your movement unit. So, for example of movement with covering fire, we have the following situation. The Germans want to push forward to that hillside on the right. And the problem is, of course, the US troops have an Cal 50 machine gun here positioned and a tank unit. And of course, moving via this clear terrain gives not much cover to this infantry unit, so we have only one green die for defense and the yellow one from the unit card if I move forward here. And if I take a look to, for example, the Cal 50, it has on this distance of 4 red, red, yellow, so a higher effectivity versus my rifles. So if I want to approach such a distance via open ground or low cover ground, I can raise my defense bonus for the rifles during the movement, partly by using a fire unit and performing movement with covering fire. And it's done really easily. I define my unit here, which is my rifle unit, wants to move across this section with a fast movement, for example, or with a normal action. And then I define to activate my machine gun as a firing unit. So I have the movement unit and I have the firing unit. Both unit has to be activated and marked accordingly. The advantage for the German player is now if he starts his movement and the machine gun says, okay, I do a reaction fire. Then the German player can decide to open covering fire with the machine gun, which gives, of course, the rifles an additional defense die depending on the attack values of the machine gun. And in this case we have a distance of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 to the cal 50, and therefore we have the soft targets below 1 to 5, we have red, red, yellow, blue. And the rule movement with covering fire says take the strongest die additional to the defense of your movement unit. So the movement unit gains a red defense die additional because of the covering fire. The covering fire does not harm the cal 50, it's just covering fire, simulating to holding down to suppress the cal 50, that the rifles are better defended, or that the cal 50 is not so much able to hit and aim to the rifles. So it's a feature, a movement feature, which provides more cover. Precondition is, of course, that the machine gun, the German machine gun, has a line of sight. It could be hindered or free. If it's blocked, then I cannot do this. I can only use once my firing unit for this kind of fire movement with covering fire. If I done it here for the first time, because the cal 50 starts reaction fire, and then I have, for example, a second one, and I move forward and this second one starts firing, I cannot repeat this with the machine gun because they are concentrating on the first reaction fire I have reacted on. And there is again a limitation. If, for example, I have my firing unit here, if, for example, my rifles are moving forward and the tank here, armored vehicle, starts firing on that rifle with a reaction fire, I cannot activate my machine gun for covering fire because this machine gun has no effective value versus on distance versus tanks. So a firing unit can only make covering fire on units they are able to fight on. That's also a limitation. If my firing unit was marked with a -1 attack die and starts covering fire, then the next weakest die is chosen. So here's the red on a distance of 5 to the cal 50 is a red one, but I am marked with -1 attack die. Then it's the next weakest, then it would have been a yellow die to gain. The same is if the firing unit is on half strength and starts firing again one weaker die color, it's a yellow one. It could not be a weaker than a blue. So if your unit has a blue as the strongest die, it's always a blue at the minimum. If it's halved and marked with -1, it's the same procedure, still one color degraded. So that's so far the rules for movement with covering. So we have finished the part of movement actions, and next part is starting with the ranged fire.